probably not going to be able to stay up for with one game kicking off at 10 p.m. East Coast time. But either way, we're going to do what we always do here on the Splash Play channel on the Monday. We're going to get ready for the slate. And we're going to do that by looking at projections, in particular our friends at Stochastic. Also, looking over at ETR and the Solver, finding out what the cash game lineups are according to that ETR data. Check out ownership projections as well. We'll check out sim lineups across ETR's data, across Stochastic's data. And by the end of this video, you'll know all my must plays and perhaps even some takeaways to build unique lineups on this two-game slate. Let's get into it. Top projected Justin Herbert today, and I guess actually should talk about Sunday Night Football, that stuff yesterday. Hope it was a good week too for you guys. I somehow turned a profit, which I was surprised by because I got blanked in the Millie Maker. But week two, hopefully a good week for you guys out there. And if it's not, you have two more games today to try to clean it up. You can play some showdowns. I won't be covering the showdowns, but of course the big tournament tonight is a double header there, a multi-gamer. So I'll just keep that in mind as I retweet this video as well on Twitter. But yeah, I'm also advancing right now. My credibility sky high right now. Feeling good about it. Hopefully you guys are feeling good about the season too. And if you're not, well, we got a lot of time left. Shout out Jake in the chat. Shout out Felix in the chat. Made it to the live show. Yes, you are living in glorious times right now as we go through these projections from Stochastic. Starting off with Justin Herbert, only player on the slate, projected for 20 fantasy points. Certainly would think that means that he will come up a good amount in the sims and the optimizer data today when we go through that in a moment. But Justin Herbert obviously had the great showing. Week one versus KC made them look even worse than KC made themselves look yesterday versus Philadelphia. But that said, for Herbert, a player who looked incredibly good in week one, big thing that stands out to me as well, team ran an incredible amount of motion plays, 32 motion pass plays in that week one game, showing a thing that generally tells us when a team is sharper, when there's a lot of motion, a lot of play action. That's what smart coaches, smart offensive coordinators do to get other teams off their back. So to see Justin Herbert also be incredibly effective with a 0.7 EPA per rush, 0.53 EPA per pass, two of the best marks in the league in week one. Herbert's hard for me to not buy into eyeball test-wise as well, having seen him play so well on that Thursday Night Football game. So Herbert, to me, I don't think sneaky on the slate. The projection now backs that out. I think he is the player that stack-wise certainly has some different options as well, where you can go Lad McConkey will be the highest owned. A pretty good margin. You can also go Quentin Johnson's way. We saw him have a good touchdown equity in week one. He also had that last year. Keenan Allen, a guy that I've been in the bag for even before he signed with the Chargers. He had a great target rate with a 32% target per out and run in week one. So you have different ways to stack up the Chargers. If you want to go with that alpha stack, you can. I think you'd also pair Justin Herbert with Omarion Hampton. Hampton actually had a pretty good role in week one, despite the box score results not being that great for him. Also had a 27% avoided tackle rate in his debut. So not a ton of juice, but basically right now for how the Chargers look, they're probably my favorite team on the slate. Herbert going to be a guy I got a lot of exposure to, and he's your top projected player according to Stochastic, which is not a surprise. Nico Collins, your number two projected guy here with an 18.3 fantasy point projection. The big thing for me that stands out with Nico Collins, I don't think the role is the same with the offensive changeover, and I would hope they recognize that in week one heading into week two. But Nico in week one, a 6.8 air yards per target. This is a guy that last year kind of feasted off the downfield targets really, and his entire playing career with CJ Stroud has benefited from the fact that Stroud takes some deep shots at him with regularity. He had no throws of 20-plus air yards going his way in week one. Did have one red zone target, was the only guy on the team to get a red zone target in week one amidst the primary receivers. So for Nico Collins, look, I get being there again. I get trying to buy in on a guy that we like the talent of. I do worry, though, seeing Jaden Higgins have a role that feels more like the previous Nico Collins role. Higgins averaged 17 air yards per target, had 2 deep targets in that game. Didn't do a whole lot with them, but overall, the opportunity for Higgins is a little bit bigger than I thought it would be. And frankly, I didn't expect to see Nico Collins get squeezed in week one. It was a low-scoring game, versus the Rams in week one. So if you want to defend Nico Collins, you can. But Houston, to me, I think out of all the teams, like Stroud had a high catchable ball rate, did a good job with that. But the offense, I think, flowed the least well out of anybody on today's slate. So for Nico, I'll probably be a little bit lower on him. Value-wise, though, he has a 2.5x value. Should be one of the best projected receivers and one of the best values technically relative to his $7,300 salary. I don't know what to tell you. It's just StreamYard. I said it a million fucking times, and to hear about it drives me nuts. But I updated software again today too to see if it was that. It's just StreamYard making my life difficult. Sorry if it's choppy for you. I usually, when I pull it up, when somebody says this, it's usually fine for me. So it's a real problem for me as well. But don't come at me with the bro felt like I can't fucking do anything. Sorry, Ryan. Watch something else if it bothers you that much. That's all I can say at this point. Geno Smith at number 3, 17.6 fantasy points, 3.3x value for him. Salary's low for Geno Smith. Geno also dropped back a ton in week 1. Had really one of the better passing results overall. Incredibly accurate with a 91% catchable ball rate for himself as well. For Geno, the big thing is he doesn't run. Herbert, we saw run a little bit more in that last game. You fucking guys, I swear, I don't know what to do. I'm honestly just going to stop streaming if the choppy sound continues. So I don't know what to tell you. It's a fucking expensive mic that works well when I do other streams. For some reason, my own StreamYard software doesn't work right now. I don't know what the deal is. And it's not every video either. So it's feeling great. But you guys are driving me fucking insane, bringing it up all the time. I can't do anything about it. I'll look in other software, I guess, if it continues. Geno Smith, 17.6 fantasy points total. Not that high for Vegas at 21.5 implied points. Third highest total on the slate, just ahead of Tampa Bay at their 20 implied points for themselves. Thank you. The sound is fine. I appreciate that, Timothy. Timothy's on my side here, protecting my sanity when I can't control whatever the fuck StreamYard and YouTube are doing in their connecting process. For Geno Smith, really the big thing is the price being so low at 5,300. I mean, it's not really an expensive QB slate with Herbert being so well projected being at 5,900, Geno at 5,300. Like these guys were all relatively in the same price range. Baker Mayfield at 6,500. He's the one you're really paying up to get. And it's probably not going to come up as much from Stochastic as a result. But Geno, the big thing to me is I expect this game to be more likely to have a shot at being a shootout. The Vegas totals as well, 42.5 implied points in the first game. The second game, about 47 implied points. So that's really the big thing you're seeing here. I think Herbert and Geno, to me, appeal the most. We'll see what we get sim-wise, but if I had to guess, the sim will also be on the same page with that. So certainly on a 4-game or on a 2-game slate with 4 QBs, that might open up the game theory more and make you want to push more towards the other game. But on paper, with the Vegas totals, with the matchups, it does seem like the Chargers and the Vegas side of things looking a little bit more appealing. We got CJ Stroud at number 4. So again, QB's up top. No surprises here. Stroud is very accurate in week 1, but the route trees look pretty non-impressive for anybody besides Jaden Higgins, like we talked about. For Stroud, I really don't think he's a preferred play for me in the slate, other than the fact he might end up being one of the lowest owned QB options. That's really all that Stroud is going for him. I think he ran 5 times as well in that last game, including 1 rush in the red zone. So maybe a slightly better rushing role for CJ Stroud, who's always been kind of a Joe Burrow tier runner where if he runs, he's probably going to get some success with it, but he's not going to do it very often. For Stroud, to me, I think he's the least appealing QB on the slate. But that said, he does project better than Baker Mayfield, which kind of surprises me here. But the team total's a little bit higher for Houston, so I guess that's why that would be. But really feel like the Texans, to me, on the slate, the team I'm most worried about their offense, like I think Tampa Bay will get right. Odd to see Tampa Bay have another low total. But for Houston on their side, I just really thought that Houston offense, like I don't get what they were doing. The fact they hired a Rams guy and then the offense looks like that kind of goes against a lot of the stuff I believe in, where you hire good coaches from good teams, tend to get good results. Didn't seem like it was the case in week 1, but Stroud, if he gets better in week 2, then great. Stroud's probably the one that benefits. But that's really how I feel about Stroud. Just wasn't that impressed. They didn't even run a lot of play action they didn't run a lot of motion. A lot of signals here for a not sharp team, unfortunately, even though the talk of the offseason was that Stroud was going to have more control over the offense. I'm not sold that's the case from week 1. Ladd McConkey, your 5th highest projected guy. He meaningfully got carved up target-wise, losing some share to Quentin Johnston, to Keenan Allen in week 1. McConkey had a 24% target route run rate for comparison. Quentin Johnston was at 19. Keenan Allen was at 32, but Ladd McConkey played the most snaps, 55 snaps compared to 53 for Quentin Johnston and only 40 for Keenan Allen. So for Ladd McConkey, think he is still your primary receiver for the Chargers. That said, if he's going to be crazily owned, and Stochastic does seem to push towards a lot of ownership here, that makes me think you want to try the shot again on Quentin Johnston, on Keenan Allen. But for Ladd McConkey, as it is right now, he projects incredibly well. At 6,900, he'll probably get crammed into lineups a good amount. It's really, I guess, one receiver that people will trust projection-wise. In terms of top value plays on the slate, Justin Herbert's number 1. Geno Smith is number 2. CJ Stroud is number 3. And this has basically been how every NFL slate has been so far. At least off Stochastic data, ETR hasn't been that far off either. But it's the QBs who every slate seem to be top projected and top values. They're not the ones priced up to the ceiling, but every other position seems to be priced up a bit more. We don't tend to have a very good value on these slates. Here we'll have a few plays that'll come up that'll look decent relative to value, but there's not really like a 3K guy. Dalton Schultz is the closest. There's not really a $2,500 guy here who's a great value. It's just a bunch of dudes who are projected reasonably well relative to salaries that are pretty accurate. So not big values on this stuff. Dalton Schultz, though, is the top value for a non-QB, 9.9 projection for him. Cade Stover, foot injury, going to be out for a while. I guess it's going to be like Irv Smith behind him because Cade Stover's hurt. Brevin Jordan is, I think they're not going to re-sign him or bring him back in. There's been a lot of movement in the depth chart. I actually should check the Texans depth chart here because I don't even know they have left. At tight end, that is. Let's see. All right, so Harrison Bryant. Harrison Bryant probably moves up the food chain here. He might be minimum salary because he was coming up behind Irv Smith on my sheet. I don't even know if Irv's on the roster. Let's see, Harrison Bryant. Harrison Bryant, 2,500 flat. Comes up behind guys like Luke Lachey, Jacob Johnson at tight end. So for Harrison Bryant, he has been a guy that's had some upside before. Maybe playing a really low-owned, low-salary tight end is a way to get unique on the slate. But I don't know if he's in the projection set. He's projected for 2.01 fantasy points here. Not coming up as a top value, but would say that when you see Dalton Schultz being one of the only values on the slate, it becomes logical to think about the backup tight ends a little bit more, especially given the fact that Houston has had other guys get meaningful targets that aren't Dalton Schultz in the past. Not crazy about Harrison Bryant or anything, but seeing Schultz pop up here, I think Harrison Bryant, if you're playing a 150 max, I'd put in some Harrison Bryant shares. 20 max, maybe not, but maybe. Jacoby Myers, your number 5 best value here at 4,900. He had a pretty good target share in that first game. Obviously, Geno Smith playing out of his mind in terms of the passing results was a part of that. But Jacoby Myers, 28% target per out run rate, right there with Brock Bowers at 35. He also played 59 snaps, most on the team of any pass catcher. So for Jacoby Myers, he's your primary receiver for the Raiders. I think at 4,900, he is a player that's probably going to get jammed into lineups a lot, and I don't really have an issue with it on a 2-game slate. That's it for now with the projections. Again, not a lot to highlight here. Texans D, a little bit behind as a value. Keenan Allen, a little bit behind as a value. And Baker Mayfield, also not that far behind as a value because QB is the only thing that's getting priced softly right now on DraftKings. Let's go to ownership next. Herbert's going to have a big year, probably. DFS football, yesterday is when you cash with Fields and Burrow lineups, and you got Henry with a 2, and Tyquan Thornton scoring TDs, or Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin, by the way, 100 real yards and a touchdown, which I didn't see live because I was dealing with people over at the house, including multiple kids. So it was a fun time, but I didn't get to watch the late games as much as I usually do with full attention, besides the Eagles, and even that. That said, seeing Troy go off, Jonathan Taylor, another contrarian bet I had this week, that helped me out a little bit in the Battle Royales, finished top 500 one Battle Royale lineup with Jonathan Taylor. So there were some good things in yesterday's slate, including Troy Franklin, Diami Brown. I don't know what they're doing. I think they're fucking up my advance rate, to be honest, because I don't expect those guys to be good all year. But big days from 2 of my late round boys. Was happy to see that, especially in a week where Bashal Tutin's finally starting to pay off. Bucky Irving, not those players are related, but in my brain, that's how I view things. Bucky Irving, expected to be the top owned player on the slate. Kind of surprises me a little bit here, given the fact that the workload for Genty, workload for Amarian Hampton were pretty good. People still like Nick Chubb, even though I don't really want to be there too much. But Bucky Irving, 68.4% expected ownership. He's your chalky play of the day. Looks like there'll be a lot of lineups based on the stochastic data with Bucky Irving and Ashton Genty. For Bucky in week 1, the results were not very good. You would hope it's the matchup. We didn't really see Minnesota's running backs look that great yesterday against the same Atlanta team. So I guess that'd be the hope. For Bucky, though, the big thing is that he had 18 intended touches that game, 2 inside the red zone, both of which were inside the 10-yard line. So for Bucky, had pretty similar to his bell cow role that he had at the end of last year. 44 snaps in that game compared to 14 for Rachaad White. 21 routes in that game compared to 7 for Rachaad White. That's really the big hope for Bucky Irving. I think the most appealing lineups to me would be Bucky, Genty, and then Hampton in the flex. I think I'm definitely going to be playing some lineups of that today. I think for Bucky, what stands out too, for one game, not the best avoided tackle rate, 7%. He didn't really get to where he was last year as about a 20-25% avoided tackle rate guy. He did have 4 targets in that game, so good target workload, but only a 19% target per out run. It's not anything special. Again, I love Bucky, and if you guys watch this channel for a long time now, you'd probably know that at this point. That said, for Bucky Irving, when he is going to be this highly owned, at 68.4%. I'm willing to play some lineups without him tonight, willing to get to maybe half my lineups having him because I think there's a good shot of him being okay today, but not enough to win a tournament with that much ownership on him. I'm happy to have Bucky in best ball as much as I do. I think he gives me 10 to 20 points today, but I'm not sold he gives you enough points that you have to have him at 68% ownership, almost 69 projected here. So I like Bucky. I don't want to speak ill of Bucky, but for 1 week of data, I'm a little bit worried about the Bucs here and how they're handling stuff with the changeover at OC. A little bit worried as well. This Houston defense is pretty good. They created a good amount of pressure last week, a 20% pressure rate, blitzed about a third of the time as well. Stuffed the run about a fourth of the time, 25% stuff run rate, which is towards the higher end of the league. Gives me some concern for Bucky because I just didn't feel like he had the room, at least for 1 week last week going against Atlanta. And number 2, Ashton Jency here, 66% ownership for him at a $7K salary. The workload for him, I think, pretty close to Bucky Irving's. He had himself also 2 red zone opportunities, 1 inside the 10-yard line in that last game. The big thing that jumped out, though, did avoid a lot of tackles on the way to doing that. A 26% avoided tackle rate for Bucky, 1/4 of that in a 1-week sample size. So Jency has some juice. Jency's efficiency was not there in week 1, a negative 0.2 EPA per rush, negative 0.3 EPA per pass, but 21 intended touches. I think that he is another obvious bell cow on this slate, much like Bucky and much like Omarion Hampton. Bucky will probably look better when Wilfs is back and then volatile. I think that's a fair way to look at it. I don't really, you guys know I don't love to worry too much about one offensive lineman missing, but I think it could be a combo of having that plus the play calling maybe not being quite as good. Again, it's 1 week. I don't want to overreact, but to see like Bucky in a small sample look like just a dude is like one of my biggest fears because so much of what he did last year was even when he had, 10 touches in a game, he had juice. He was missing tackles. He was efficient. For 1 week, he was not efficient in running, passing, didn't miss tackles. It spooks me a little bit because that's sort of what the whole thesis of Bucky is. But it's 1 game, so we'll see. Ladd McConkey at number 3, 61% expected ownership for him, and that's $6,900 salary. As we talked about earlier, you can go to Quentin Johnston, you can go to Keenan Allen. Those guys can earn targets, but certainly the ceiling for Ladd McConkey, the projection's really high. I do think the projection reflects a little bit of a different reality going back to last year where they didn't have another potential alpha target earner. Keenan Allen, a 32% target per out run rate when he was out there. That is alpha target earning, right there for at least 1 week. And Keenan's always been that guy playing with Justin Herbert that's had that share of, equity with him overall in the passing game. That spooks me a little bit for this much ownership of Ladd, but I also think too at his price tag, I'm certainly interested in going down to a slightly cheaper Mike Evans and trying to get some leverage on Igbuka's projections, perhaps being a little bit high for catching 2 touchdowns last week. But Ladd McConkey is certainly going to be a player in the mix in a lot of lineups today at 60% expected ownership. He'll be one of the chalkiest plays in the slate. Nico Collins, talked about my concerns for him. He'll be at 59% here. The hope is that they greatly correct that route tree from week 1 because it was not looking like a Nico Collins rollout of opportunity. But he's going to be in a good amount of lineups. Ladd McConkey, Nico, Bucky, Ashton Jency, put the ownership together here. There's probably a lot of people playing lineups with that 4 as a baseline to build off of. Brock Bowers has been banged up, but got back into practice at 6,300. He got targeted 50% of the time he was running a route, but also played a lot less snaps with him not being the primary inline tight end as Michael Mayer did that. So Bowers, 58% ownership, going down to save money with a Michael Mayer and get direct leverage there. Playing Mayer and Jacoby Myers, I think, is a valid approach on the slate because it's a 2-gamer. But obviously, Brock Bowers, tremendous talent, did really well. Also got targeted incredibly downfield compared to his role last year, which was a lot of short throws. He has to do the stuff after the catch. The same thing for Brock Bowers in college. But in this week 1 situation for him, he had 10.1 air yards per target, had 2 deep targets in that game as well, which you don't see that kind of work very often for tight end. It was a part of what got me interested in Luke Musgrave many years ago, that he was getting great downfield work. It was good at Oregon State. For Brock Bowers, if he's going to expand his route tree to get downfield, to get more vertical routes, there's going to be upside for him. So I have no issue with Brock Bowers' ownership. It just always feels a little bit high for the top 5 guys when it's a 2-game slate. Going down the food chain here, Omarion Hampton, 53% expected ownership. Jacoby Myers at that very cheap $4,900 price tag, 53% for him. Mike Evans, your Ladd McConkey pivot, 52% ownership. Keenan Allen at 36, or 39 rather. Mika Igbuka at 36. Michael Mayer under 10%. He has direct leverage on Brock Bowers, at least for tight end production. Though Bowers certainly playing more than tight end with his role. Jaden Higgins, 5% owned here with a lot of air yards going his way. He could potentially make a winning lineup with 1 play with that kind of air yard usage he had in game 1. Xavier Hutchinson played a bunch. Not really a guy I want to get to, but he is 3% owned and 3,200. Woody Marks had the same snap share as Damian Pierce in week 1. He'll be 0.2% owned. I probably wouldn't want to go his way. But Pierce and him being that low owned, if Nick Chubb gets hurt early, maybe one of those guys make a lineup. Conceptually, how much salary am I comfortable leaving tonight? I mean, probably not thousands, but you could leave some. It's not going to be a priority, though, like it would be for a showdown. You could still play a 50K lineup on a 2-game slate and not feel too bad about it. If you leave $1,000 on the table, 1,500, that's probably about right. But it's hard to say that off the top of my head. It's definitely less than you would for a showdown, though. All right, so that's the ownership right now. Let's go to ETR next, see what we have in terms of a projection-based build here with ETR data. Let me go to their slate here. Okay, looks like no sim prepared yet on the solver. Let me refresh the page to make sure. Okay, they've not set up their sim yet. That's okay. We will just do the basic projection math here, find a cash game lineup. And the big thing on this part of the process using ETR data, when you use ETR's data to build a lineup with no variance on it, just building kind of off the optimal projections, you're getting a good read on what ETR users in particular will be building just kind of as a default. So when you see guys coming up 100% of the time here, those guys end up being jammed into more lineups. You saw it yesterday. Hollywood Brown, I think, ended up being 60% owned on like the afternoon slate. ETR just had him as like an unavoidable play on the main slate, let alone the afternoon slate. So ETR's data, much like stochastics, drives a lot of the markets. When you're aware of what the projections do for those players with the various data providers, you're able to get a read on what the field can do. At least that's my theory on it. Justin Herbert in your cash game here for this 2-game slate as of 12:20 p.m. on the East Coast on a Monday. Bucky Irving, Ashton Genty, Mike Evans. So 2 guys that I like here making the lineup. Evans, I thought might be a little bit less owned because McConkey being at the same price here, but I guess you could just easily afford both. Mike Evans, Ladd McConkey, Jacoby Myers, Dalton Schultz, Keenan Allen, and Bucks D. Just going across these lineups real fast. Looks like a lot of Keenan Allen in the flex. Some O'Marion Hampton in the flex. No tight end in the flex in the top 25. But a lot, it's either basically for at least this ETR data, Keenan Allen or O'Marion Hampton coming into the flex position for these spots. The only player, though, in every single lineup, which makes sense because he's just way too cheap, Jacoby Myers at 4,900 is in 100% of these lineups. So right away, if you fade Jacoby Myers on the slate, I think it's a tough one because he was out there so much. But if you fade him on the slate, you'll get probably different right away, get off the beaten path of people being owned. Same principle here, even though we are playing a little bit differently for showdowns. But when you see a guy with a showdown build and this optimal lineup's coming up a bunch, you see multiple guys coming up a bunch, it could tell you if there's multiple guys, if I just fade one of them in lineups or just make it so I'm playing max one in my lineup group, I'm getting off the beaten path. For today's slate, I would say if you're not playing Jacoby Myers, that's the one guy that will probably find his way into every lineup because the projection looks good on Stochastic. He's a top 5 value there. Projection looks good here on ETR. He's getting into every optimal lineup here in the top 25. Jacoby Myers will be your chalk play that people won't be able to avoid, and I think it's fair because he's like very cheap for the role he has. Keenan Allen's at 96% of these top 25 lineups. Herbert is as well. Ladd McConkey, 92% of them. Bucky, 92%. So this top 5 is going to come up a lot with ETR data. So naturally, you'll get probably a lot of Herbert doubles. Kind of sucks because the way to try to get unique the Sims is going to give you is probably stacking up the Chargers even more. My brain usually tells me to play less of the stack when they're coming up this much naturally in projections. Basically, the logic being that if you're getting a Herbert double stack over and over again, just off the projections with no variance on top, no stacking boost being given, you kind of want to not have that stack, and the Sims will force people to stack it up even more. So my real game theory take here would be limit yourself to pass catchers from the Chargers, because I think everybody's instinct is going to be to cram in more Chargers with the stack. And, I'll play certainly some Herbert, Ladd, and Keenan with O'Marion Hampton, try to play the onslaught a little. But I think that ends up getting pushed more than you'd want to see. I need Jalen Noel or stopping at Hutchinson. I don't really have a strong read on Noel, but he got 17 snaps last game, 2 intended touches, 15% target per out run rate. He also was targeted directly at the line of scrimmage, so he wasn't really getting deep shots, 1 air yard per target. Noel is somebody you can get in a 150 max if you really want to in a 20 max, but the usage doesn't really make me feel that good. Raiders D would kill the Herbert stacks as leverage. That's true. I mean, look, and I think sometimes the instinct when you see a very obvious stack coming up a lot is to play the defense, and you definitely can do that. But you got to keep in mind that like these guys are really well projected, so you are going to end up then knocking down the projection of all your lineups. That could be something that hurts a little bit too much, but we'll see what we get on Stochastic. Either way, though, ETR, I do expect people to be getting a lot of Charger stacks. I'm not going to build the sim lineups on here because we don't have sims prepared by ETR anyway. But right now, the big takeaway is Chargers coming up heavy, Jacoby Myers coming up heavy, Bucky Irving coming up heavy if you're using ETR data. But let's go to Stochastic next. If you want more from ETR, if you want to see when their sims come out, use the promo code SPLASH over at the Solver. Unfortunately, they put out their sims. They're supposed to be out by noon every day. That's part of why I switched the streams to being noon every day. But they don't have it out yet, so it'll probably be out at some point this afternoon to be my guess. But check it out, promo code SPLASH at the Solver. Link down below as well if you want to get their data and tools. And now we're on to Stochastic here. And guys, show some love if you can. If you're watching this video live or after the fact, please do subscribe down below. Hit the like button, leave a comment. If you're watching on Twitter, hit the like button on there. Hit the follow button as well. My streams on Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays all flow directly through Twitter and YouTube here. And I prefer you go on YouTube. Prefer you be a YouTube member if you want, but you know, watch it wherever you want. Show some love if you can, and help me keep building this work ethic that I have here. This really Sisyphean pushing of a boulder upstream is what DFS has become in 2025. But we'll keep doing it here. Still feeling good about my year. I feel like I totally get why, too, with like my best ball advance rates this year being like real clean. I get why people get really fixated on their advance rates. And I know it means nothing. Like I know we have 15 more weeks till money's paid out. But I gotta say, it's making me feel like, all right, you know what? Even if like the week-to-week DFS, I haven't had the big wins yet, was a 1v1 away on the Thursday night slate from like a nice 5K payout. That stuff gets a little tilting when you put as much work as I do. So at least see best ball like, all right, you know what? We built some nice teams this year. Built a lot of Troy Franklin teams. Built a lot of Austin Eckler teams. That's not gonna be good. Now, I was actually with the field on Joe Burrow too. So I was surprised I actually got there because I never took Joe Burrow ahead of ADP. But I am, in fact, as hurt by anybody. Well, not as hurt as anybody. But shout out to you guys who did reach for Joe Burrow early. Now you're learning why we don't do that. But sucks to see for him. Turf toe injury if you missed it. He's now definitely going to have surgery, going to be out 3 months. So hope as he gets back in for the playoffs. But it's Jake Browning season, which doesn't kill your Bengal stacks. But boy, does it help teams that did take the Bengal stack without the QB, which is stupid because that's not how best ball should work. But it's how it happens every year. For some stack, not all of them. Your number one ROI lineup, according to Stochastic data here, is a CJ Stroud lineup. Stroud, Nick Chubb, so the RB with a onslaught of Texans. Omarion Hampton, Nico Collins, Ladd McConkey, Jacoby Myers, Dalton Schultz, part of that onslaught. Ashton Genty, Texans D. So really a full fade in the Bucs. The Bucs, a team I really wasn't impressed with too much in week one. Thought they kind of luck boxed the Emeka Egbuka touchdowns. The offense did not flow as well as I would hope for. Even Egbuka getting targeted like 15% of the time he was running a route. It's not really what the thesis of Egbuka would be for him to pay off, in full point PPR. But that said, this lineup here, playing the QB that's the least appealing, over stacking, I guess, a little bit for Houston. That's what the Sims will give you. So not a surprise to see. Number 2 is Geno Smith. Geno Smith, Bucky Irving, Ashton Genty, Ladd McConkey, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen. Okay, so this is a real big Vegas stack. A QB plus 3 of 2 opponents. Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen, Dalton Schultz, Brock Bowers, Texans D. I got to say this build is exactly what I want to build on this slate. Maybe the Dalton Schultz part, not so much, but he's cheap and he's pretty much the lead tight end will be on the field the most. But a game stack of the second game going with the onslaught and the game that seems more appealing based on Vegas total, based on how these teams played, where Vegas's defense was not too great. Versus Drake May in week 1, Chargers offense looked really good, and their defense, I think, gave Mahomes shots, even though he didn't come through very much in week 1. I like to see him a lot in number 2. You could swap some parts around, come off McConkey, maybe upgrade Schultz to something else in the flex. That's what I would try to build. Top strategy to get different on a 2-game slate. I mean, I think the Sims will generally be onslaughting more of one game. One that you can do in particular on the Solver, I guess you could do it theoretically here. It would be a little more complicated to do on a Stochastic sim. Just take one team out. So, like, that's something that worked well on a Thanksgiving slate. I think it was last year. I think was it the Jags who played on Thanksgiving and were really highly owned? It all blurs together when you do the content for as many years. But basically, there was a slate a couple years ago where the Bills really overplayed. Your move was to probably limit yourself to 2 Bills because people were getting like 6 in an optimizer. That's one thing you could do on a short slate. Another thing would be to take the team out entirely, where let's say every lineup is getting force-fed on this slate. the Bucs have the lowest total. So like if you don't think the Bucs are going to play well today, taking all the Bucs out of your lineup, playing a lineup that only includes, Texans, Chargers, and Raiders. It's another way to get unique that people don't do enough, just kind of removing one team in the hopes that they get a fail outcome. And obviously, if you want to play the defense on top of that, that's going against that team even better. That's another way to get unique. It's not quite as cut and dry as a showdown where it's like, your obvious ways to get unique on any slate. Leave salary on the table, play a lower projected captain, those kind of things. But I think the one that people don't do enough would be just like fading one team entirely, playing a lineup built on everybody else. So that's that. Joe Burrow reminds me I should give my disposable income to St. Jude's rather than the best ball. Yeah, I'm sorry. Actually, you are one of the guys who did try to get that stack a lot. It sucks. Like I don't know how to make anybody feel better about it. As I guess as the expert of having injured QBs drive a lot of my portfolio for a few years. Not a whole lot you can do to feel good about it. But, the hope is that the stack part of it still pays off. Your second QB gets there. You survive better than other teams in your same situation with that, that Bengal stack construction. But it's tough, man. Like, I don't know what to say for people having the injury. Like, even for Austin Eckler, like, I don't even feel it. And that's like, he's a guy I had 20% across my entire portfolio because it's like, well, fuck, I guess I just now have to hope the other 5 RBs and all those teams do a good job. And I guess that's the best way to say it is going like, well, I'm fucked for this part of it, but hopefully the rest of the teams make up for it. Everybody knows that playing best ball, but reminding yourself of it maybe is a helpful mental process. Geno Smith at number 3, Geno, Bucky Irving, Ashton Jency, Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka. So a big Buck stack, but with Geno Smith on top of it. Jacoby Myers, Dalton Schultz, Brock Bowers, Raider. So really what you're getting here is like 2 passing game stacks. Really 2 onslaughts of teams without much in the way of bringbacks. Does feel like if the Raiders have a massive offensive performance, somebody on the Chargers is going to come as a bringback. But this is what the Sims are giving you. Again, you're getting kind of a double onslaught build for the Raiders and the Bucs. At number 4 is CJ Stroud again. So it's Geno and Stroud up top of the stochastic sim. Stroud, Nick Chubb, Omarion Hampton, Nico Collins, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen. So a Houston double here with Brock Bowers, Ashton Jency, and Texans D making it as well. So, another Texans onslaught. The one that we're not seeing up top is Bucs heavy stuff besides the build here that included Geno Smith at QB. At number 5, one Chargers build here. So your top ROI lineups do not include the Justin Herbert stack, which doesn't surprise me. Ownership's going to be real high on that Chargers stack. Herbert, Ashton Jency, Nick Chubb, Nico Collins, Quentin Johnson, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Keenan Allen, Texans. So what you're seeing the sim do here is you're playing the chalky stack of the Chargers, but you are fading the highest owned piece in Ladd McConkey. You're putting in Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen. Of course, the assumption would be if Ladd McConkey doesn't do enough to make a winning lineup than his other receivers did. Now you're adding the Texans D here, which is coming up a lot here. 4 out of the top 5 teams have Texans D tonight. I got to say, just looking at these top lineups, see what the overall 150 says. Bucs stacks might be the move to get unique here and still have enough upside because the Bucs are coming in pretty well projected. Don't give a shit either. There's them's the breaks. There you go. That's the boys know. The boys know. But I know for people that are new to best ball, and I saw a little bit on Twitter, it's like this happens every year where people just don't kind of grasp what best ball is. It is a war of attrition. It is like, sometimes it's not fun. You lose the injuries, but as long as you realize that like everybody else is suffering the same injuries as well, and there are people that probably drafted those players even more stupidly than some of us did, then hopefully you'll come out, in the net positive. Some injuries, if they all happen though, like my pup list all-stars of Chris Godwin, Joe Mixon, Tyjae Spears, Marshawn Lloyd, that's where you run the risk a little bit more. But even with that, like I'm advancing okay. So I don't know. It's easy to see it when you're doing okay in the first couple of weeks. But if you're doing poorly, that can flip just as easily over the next 4-6 weeks. Remember, last year, the Saints were the team it looked like everybody needed to have. So that's showbiz. Your top ROI player on this slate, in fact, the only player with a positive ROI, according to Stochastic, is Dalton Schultz. He does have the full run of that tight end role. Harrison Bryant's a very competent player. He has been whenever called upon, in particular, those Browns days. That said, he's been moving from team to team a lot lately. So Schultz should be safely ahead in terms of the pecking order. But when you see Dalton Schultz being pushed this much, I don't think it'd be crazy to build a team that just takes all the chalky stuff, takes all the best sim lineups here, some of what we saw with CJ Stroud, and just go down to Harrison Bryant and go up on somebody else, see how that goes, or even just go to Harrison Bryant over Schultz straight away. That could be one other way to play it a little bit more uniquely. Everything else is a negative ROI, but behind Dalton Schultz is Texans D, CJ Stroud, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen. So Sims loving Texans stuff based on the ROIs, but in particular loving Schultz, Texans D, and CJ Stroud with Jacoby Myers and Keenan Allen right behind. Those guys are, again, too cheap for their roles. Stack ROIs probably don't matter too much here. Everything's negative for a single stack. Everything's negative for a double stack. The only positive ROI here is the QB +3 with CJ Stroud, and the Sims love CJ Stroud today. Exposure-wise, your highest exposed players. Haven't heard one sound issue. Okay, so that's, I don't know, man. That's what's driving me insane too. Is like people keep telling me it, and then I pull up my phone, and it's like, it sounds fine to me. But I know it's doing it, and I trust you guys aren't like fucking gaslighting me. But it's like, I can't do anything else. Like I have a good production setup here, and it works. Whenever I do stochastic, I don't have the issues. So I like, and that's also on StreamYard, so I really don't get it. I don't know. It's something, but I apologize for it. I can't figure out what it is. And I also don't want to overhaul everything I'm doing production-wise because I don't know how to produce with OBS. I do know how, but it's like a lot of work and kind of confusing. Your top exposed players in Stochastic's top 150. Just at the beginning, but it's been fine since. Okay. Yeah, it's insane, but I appreciate you guys letting me know. It's not a you guys problem. I appreciate, and I get what people have to tell me, but it's like the guy going like, bro, just fix it. It's like, I can't fix it. Oh no. Thank you guys. I guess reassuring me. You sound fine. Your voice still sucks, Spags, but you sound okay relative to that. But thank you guys. Every other stream is an AI deep fake. The sound issues prove yours is real. That's true. That's how I keep it organic here. Keep it authentic. Ashton Jets by being shitty at what I do. That's a content creator. Ashton Jensen, your top exposed guy, 75% of lineups, fields of 66. Again, the box score results were not great last week, but that was against the New England team. Every Mike Vrabel team, you can go back if you really want to. Every Vrabel team for the last 5 years, great run defense, awful pass defense. We saw it again yesterday with them able to get the Dolphins back on track a little bit. So having that happen in week one, I'm not surprised that Jensen not getting great results. That said, getting over 20 touches, having over a 25% avoided tackle rate, that's the guy that we drafted. That's the guy that they took so highly in the first round. He is that dude. Jensen, to me, hard to fade in the slate besides the ownership being this high. But Stochastic wants you to get 8% more than the field. Jacoby Myers at 4,900, just way too cheap of a salary, 53% expected ownership. Stochastic giving you about 20% more, 19% leverage on Jacoby Myers. He will be very obvious, like we talked about here. ETR puts him in every top 25 optimal lineup. It's one of those things where you have to kind of hold your nose and ignore some very obvious projection plays sometimes for the sake of tournaments. Anything I would say is play your Jacoby Myers, play it in 3/4 of lineups, but try to allot some amount that doesn't have Jacoby Myers, because the big lesson of DFS is always that what makes you uncomfortable makes everybody else uncomfortable. Not playing Jacoby Myers today will make people uncomfortable. So he comes up a lot in the sim. He's a great play. But that makes him also a great fade, and that's the stupidity of NFL DFS, especially on a 2-game slate. Nico Collins, 63% exposure, fields at 60, so a positive 3% leverage on Nico Collins. My big concern is that the role wasn't the same out of all the value guys, ignoring the fact Jacoby Myers gets into every lineup. I feel like role-wise, Nico is the one I'm worried most about. I just think there's no underlying signs of him having as good of a role as he has in the past. Obviously, that could result in course correcting even more, getting things more right. Or you could end up in a situation like the Eagles had yesterday, where the thought would have been, all right, A.J. Brown's going to be a bitch about this. He's going to get a bunch of targets. Yeah, he got 7 targets in that game, but wasn't that good with it. Still had 25 yards. Maybe the passing game thing just isn't that good. So that's what I would fear for Nico Collins with this much ownership. But certainly a guy that was great last year. I thought he'd be in the hunt to be a regular every week 8K player this week. I just did not see it based on the usage in week one. And I think it's a great concern how he was used in week one, to the point that I would be happy to get a less of Nico on the slate, especially compared to Jensen, especially compared to Jacoby Myers. Bucky Irving at number 4, 63% exposure, fields at 69. So technically a fade on Bucky, but he's in over 60% of the lineups today, which is going to happen on a 2-game slate. Brock Bowers, 57% exposure in Stochastic's top 150, 58% expected ownership. So again, a little bit of a fade on Brock Bowers as well, but he is still in the vast majority of lineups. Other guys in over half the Stochastic top 150, Omarion Hampton's at 56%, Keenan Allen's at 55%, and that's a pretty big positive leverage stand. Dalton Schultz is in 55%, and Texans D is in 51%. Your most positively leveraged plays are Schultz, Texans D, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen, CJ Stroud, but massive stand on Dalton Schultz. 2x the exposure, more than that on Dalton Schultz, with him being expected to be about 24% owned. And Texans D as well. I love the Bucs. Really wasn't sold on them in week one as well. And I think with these exposures, I will be trotting out some Bucs and hoping that they beat the Texans ownership here by a good margin. Biggest fades from Stochastic. Mike Evans, pretty big fade on Mike Evans, 17% less exposure in the field. He's still in a third of lineups, but the field wants to play him in half their lineups. And again, I like Mike Evans. I like the bounce back spot. Him just kind of sucking a little bit away from Mika Egbuka. He'll get tough coverage for sure. Let me look at the matchup splits real fast. If there's anything noteworthy here. Texans played zone D, 2/3 of dropbacks. In week 1, man defense only in 20.7. Man should be the benefit to Mike Evans. Zone should be a little bit more of a benefit to Mika Egbuka based on 1 week of sample size. Though Evans did crush versus man and zone last year. I'll still follow Mike Evans off the cliff here today. But that said, it is scary to see him be the biggest fade in Stochastic's data. Chargers D, only 14% exposure. Fields at 31, so a pretty big fade. A half the exposure to Chargers D in Stochastic's top 150. Baker Mayfield, massive fade on Baker Mayfield. 3% exposure. Fields at 18. I was so impressed by what Baker did last year. So far in the first game, his catchable ball rate was down. Maybe that's just bad luck. He did take 5 deep shots in the game. Got sacked a lot, but still handled pressure fairly well. With only a negative 0.2 EPA there. I just think the move is to buy in on the Baker bounce back here. Sims strongly disagree, though. As I always say here, like my takes are my takes. You should follow the data. Data says fade Baker, fade Mike Evans. Robert Griffin III, though, says hammer Bucs tonight. Look, that's the shitty part of the Sims, man. Is like you see this happen in the Sims, and you go like, I just have to get smarter and do something different. The Sims also yesterday said fade Saquon, fade Derrick Henry. That was dead on. The Sims said play Devon Achane, play Christian McCaffrey. The Sims get shit right so often. But on a 2-game slate, if they get this wrong here, they're going to be leading a lot of Stochastic users into no Bucs exposure. Lad McConkey, still a pretty big fade on him as well. Negative 13% leverage. Unlike Baker Mayfield, though, he's in half the lineups. Baker Mayfield only 3%, Lad McConkey in 48%. So it's not really a big fade, but, it is a fade relatively. And K. Otten, 7% exposure, Fields at 15. So they're fading Evans, fading Otten. Not fading Egbuka. Sims flat with the field and Egbuka, 35.3% exposure. Fields at 35. Any Sterling Shepard. Not getting any Sterling Shepard. Pretty close to with the field on Bucky. But yeah, Stochastic data fading the Bucs hard. And I really think it comes down to the fact the Bucs total is so low, like 20 implied points. I think the data ends up treating that like it's gospel. And on a 2-game slate, if you get this right, that the Texans underperform and the Bucs play pretty well, you're going to get a lot of leverage on Stochastic users. So that's what we're doing. Send Jameis to the Bengals. Why? You got fucking Jake Browning, who's going to absolutely sling it recklessly. I don't think your stack is shading with Jake Browning coming in like that much. The upside's going to be a little bit lower, and you lose the QB with it. But Jameis would just be a sloppier version of what Jake Browning does anyway. Let's handle the lineup real fast. See what we get sim-wise here. And we will call it a day. But guys, show some love if you can. Subscribe, like button. You guys know the deal here. Join the channel as well. You get access to my Discord. $5 on there. Join the channel and get all the great conversation we have in there. Observations I have from news items. Stuff in-game, data-wise as well. My data sheet, which is really the biggest part of my process, being able to reference quickly all the data from each team in a given week. Advanced stats, sports info solutions, Pro Football Reference. I put it into one clean place, and that's what you get here. But join the channel. It does support the show here. And also check out Stochastic, 15% off promo code SPLASH. All the stuff I show you here on screen from Stochastic, that's all 15% off, link down below. And that does support the channel directly. Half the money you pay to Stochastic comes back to me, and that's very helpful for me to keep this shit afloat. So please, do sign up over there, make a new account, sign up again, or whatever. All right. Let's build a lineup here and counting for my fades. The sim isn't going to hate it, so we're going to build a negative ROI lineup, but I'm going to go Baker Mayfield here right away. I'm also going to go Mike Evans right away. 2 players the sim wanted to fade. 2 guys, though, that I think stand to bounce back. If Egbuka doesn't come off well this week, and frankly, if Egbuka ends up a little bit overowned because he has been the belle of the hype ball for months now, I think going to Egbuka would be a decent, going away from Egbuka, going to Evans would be a decent move here. Same thing if you want to add Otton on top of that, just to make a case that Egbuka gets faded. I still think Egbuka will give you a certain amount of points, but I just don't think he gives you 20 plus. Like 2 touchdowns last week to me. He wasn't even in the red zone. He was getting targeted. It was just downfield targets that he paid off by catching it in the end zone for one, breaking another one into the end zone. Besides that, look, you can call it bad defending if you want. I just wasn't impressed by a 16% target per route run rate. I just don't think that's sustainable for him to have that kind of upside. So playing into Evans more for me will be a priority. I am going to put Bucky in for this as well. But I'm also going to put in Genty, and I'm going to put in Omarion Hampton because I like all these 3 guys, and I want to see what it takes to build around this. So Omarion Hampton, my flex guy. Genty, playing both RBs from the same game, a little more acceptable on a 2-game slate than it would be on a main slate. A receiver, I think we've gotten different enough, so let's play some cheap chalk. Jacoby Myers, we know, is going to come up easily. Do we just play Keenan Allen, or do we play Higgins? Let's play Keenan Allen because we know the Sims like him enough. And now we have a tight end. The Sim would certainly love to get us Dalton Schultz. We don't need to play Harrison Bryant in this lineup. We don't need to save that much money. I guess let's go Kate Otten here. Or Bowers. Kate Otten, or not Bowers, or Michael Mayer. Oh, we'll go with the stack first. Let's see how that goes, and maybe I'll make a swap. And then on defense, I mean, we played no Texans, so I guess it should be Bucs D. So onslaughting Bucs here. Let's see how the Sims. If I had to guess poorly, we left 700 on the table. So in that range that I talked about, I think feels fine for a 2-game slate. But the team here is that we're simming out right now, negative 15% ROI, but it still wins sometimes. Baker Mayfield, Bucky Irving, Ashton Genty, Mike Evans, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen, Kate Otten, Omarion Hampton, Bucs D. What if we take out Cade, put in... Can't afford Bowers no matter what. Let's put in Mayer. What if we also, because the Sims love Texans D, what if we also put in Texans D? So Baker scores enough here, but they give away a touchdown. Not the way you'd want to play again for a main slate. On a 2-game slate, playing the defense with your guys is fine. That got worse. Negative 48% ROI. I just don't think the Sim is going to give me much positive. Let's look at what a good Baker lineup would be. Instead of me just kind of pawing away at the Sims, what does it think a good Baker Mayfield lineup is? All right, so Baker, Bucky, Hampton, Evans. You have to have Egbuka, it thinks. Jacoby Myers, Kate Otten, Brock Bowers, Buccaneers D. Leaves 400 on the table. All right. This one has the RBs I wanted. Baker, Bucky, Genty, Mike Evans, Egbuka, Jacoby Myers, Dalton Schultz, Omarion Hampton, Raiders D. So I guess it's saying if you're going to play the Bucs, you have to get Egbuka in the lineup or the Sim's not going to think it's good. Number 3 is Baker Mayfield, Bucky Irving, Ashton Genty, Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka, Jacoby Myers, Kate Otten, Keenan Allen, Bucs D. That one's pretty close to what I had, except you're putting in Egbuka. Okay, this one, no Egbuka. Baker, Bucky, Genty, Mike Evans, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen, Dalton Schultz, Brock Bowers, Bucs D. That one's pretty close to kind of the spirit of what I was trying to build, but a better ROI. So, look, you can get positive ROIs for Baker. It seems like only 4 of the top 150, though, are Bucs stacks. So, just in my opinion, on a 2-game slate with 4 different teams, Bucs stacks seem really underplayed. Like, that's going to be what I take my shot at today. Watch it be Shepard. Shepard was involved enough. I mean, Shepard's not a great play by any stretch. But Shepard played 37 snaps, had 6 targets, 22% target per route running. Technically got targeted more running a route than Egbuka did. Egbuka played a lot more snaps. Egbuka played 54 snaps, 36 routes. But yeah, I don't know. I think Sterling Shepard, Tell you what, Sterling Shepard scores a touchdown today. He's not going to get played very much. But the Bucs stuff overall, like the more obvious play is just that the Bucs have a good day and they're not played enough by the Sims because the total's low and it was bad week 1 results. And I think that's really bumping down the Bucs projection a lot more than it should be compared to last year. Even with my concerns about the coaching staff changeover not being good, this is way too little Bucs. But that's the video for now, guys. Again, show some love if you can. Subscribe, hit the like button. It all matters a lot for me here. Just one provider showing you my gambling here for all these different slates. I'll also be on Stochastics live before lock show at 6 p.m. today. So I'll be looking at the stuff, building some lineups this afternoon. So I'll have a different read on it, I guess. Well, not a different read, but I'll have a more nuanced read by then. But it's cool hanging out with Laffy on those shows. Always have a good time with that. I think it's good content. So watch while you're building lineups today at 6 p.m. on Stochastic. Of course, make sure to go over to Stochastic as well. Use the promo code SPLASH, 15% off. It's the best deal they have going right now. A lot of their deals were also only 1 month. This deal gets you 15% off in perpetuity. Did I point the right way? Yeah, I did. 15% off in perpetuity. So check it out. Promo code SPLASH, link down below. But all their data packages, all their Sims packages, the cheap stuff, the expensive stuff, the season-long stuff, the weekly packages, it's all 15% off. So please do click that link because it's the only way I can keep doing this. Discord, $5 to join. Join the channel as well. You get access to the Discord. You get access to all the data I show you guys. Premium video every Friday, going game by game as well, looking at all the advanced analytics. It's what we do here. It's part of my process, and hopefully it adds value to yours. So join for $5, get access to all that stuff, and whatever, make yourself happy. Solver 2, promo code SPLASH. Check it out. Link down below. 3 takeaways to build unique lineups today. Bucs stacks, just going to be under own, whether it hits or not. I think you owe yourself to play more Bucs stacks than less. Number 2 would be fading Jacoby Myers. He'll come up easily in every lineup. He projects really well. He's too cheap, but he and Keenan Allen in particular just get everywhere to every lineup. If you fade one of them, fade both. In particular, fade Jacoby Myers. That'll get you different. And third way to get unique, I think playing Bucky, Genty, and O'Marion Hampton will get you the most unique. Frankly, not a lot of Nick Chubb coming up. That probably does too, but it just seems like a lot of lineups are going to have Bucky and Genty. So if you fade one of those guys, that'll get you different. But Stochastic projecting a ton of ownership. The projections on both sides pushing to a lot of Bucky and Genty. It's tough to fade one of them, but I think if you do that and that guy does fail, I think it's part of why the Bucs fading builds coming up a good amount here for Stochastic Sims. It probably gets you different. I don't really want to play that as much because I think it's getting served up pretty easily by the sim. But I think if you fade Bucky, fade the Bucs, at the very least, fade one of Bucky and Genty. It's not the move I want to make, but I do think that would get you unique on the slate. But there we go, guys. That's okay. This one is clear as a bell. Yeah, look, my life is hell with audio on this channel. But I appreciate all you guys being here. Don't forget to gamble responsibly, guys, even though it is always money time here on the Splash Play channel. Follow the channel at Splash Play Pod. Follow me at Chris Spags. Be back on Thursday for another showdown slate back at 6 p.m. for Stochastic Live before lock as well. So I'll see you guys again soon for those, and check it in the Discord too. Always happy to chop it up in there when I'm not doing content these next few days. I'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your days. Good luck, and go Bucs go. And see you soon, guys. Bye.